What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Jersey Joe Show. I haven't done this in about a week, so I'm a little bit rusty, and I do apologize. But just to kind of give a little bit of an update, I had some issues with my plumbing. Haven't been able to stay in my house for about a week, so luckily things are kind of shaping up now. So I'm back on a regular schedule, at least for now. So keep an eye out for another one of these tomorrow, the next day, and so on until we finish this series. And I so apologize that it's been so long since I've done this. I know it's the middle of September and I'm wearing a knit cap, but that's only because I went to the Yankees game yesterday and got a free one. So I wanted to rep my New York Yankees here, my Bronx Bombers, who are now in a race for the division with the Boston Red Sox. Don't care that they lost today because they're still going to win the division. And I know I'm losing about half my viewers who are either Mets fans or who hate the Yankees, because there's a lot more of the latter than the former. But anyway, let's talk some hockey. So today we're going to talk about the Minnesota Wild and their odd season last year. I don't know how else to put it. It was a very odd season. So if you don't know, Bruce Boudreau came in last summer and really just... I can't even describe the effect he's had on the team. It was a good effect, but there was also some weird stuff that happened in the playoffs that really, you can't really say it was anything but a coaching issue. So basically, Boudreau came in last year and pushed the offense to have one of the best offenses in the league. I think they were number 2 overall. They had one of the best seasons in franchise history, made it to the playoffs, and then fell flat on their asses and lost to St. Louis Blues in 5 games and scored 8 goals over those 5 games. What happened? I don't know. I think it was a combination of the team not having good playoff experience, of being tired from the long regular season, where they did have second longest win streak in the league. I think it was 10 games, 12 games, something around there. And then you have Bruce Boudreau, who is a perennial playoff disappointment with losing, 4 Game 7s with the Anaheim Ducks in his tenure there. So you had an interesting mixture of good and bad. You have an aging team led by a lot of veterans, and you have, I guess you could say, some good prospects in the pipeline, but they're not anything to really write home about. So what can we expect from Minnesota Wild going into next season? They're a wild card, and I don't mean that they're going to make the playoffs. I mean that they're going to be a very interesting team to watch, because they can either be a top 2, top 3 in the division, or they could be at the bottom of the Central with the Avalanche. So there's a lot that can go good for them next season. There's a lot that can go wrong for them. So let's take a look at what they did this offseason. So the biggest trade this offseason was the departure of Jason Pominville and Marcos Candela for Tyler Ennis and Marcus Foligno from the Buffalo Sabres, which can't be really painted as anything other than cap relief. That's really all that was, trying to get as much value as you can for dumping that cap space. Because, and we'll talk about this later, they made a number of different signings with their cap space. Additionally, they brought in Kyle Quincy, who is actually a really serviceable D-man. I know he gets a lot of shit, but he's easily a 5-6 D-man, and he can hold the third pairing pretty well. So I do like that from Minnesota, and they gained Ryan Murphy. You're seeing a lot of departures and not that much value arriving to replace it for Minnesota. So again, it's going to be really an unpredictable season for them going into this year. As I said, with that cap space, they re-signed Niederreiter, and they re-signed Granlund for a number of years heading into next season, and that's something they needed to do, which is why they lost Pominville. That's why they lost Scandella, because they needed those contracts off of their backs so they can recoup that value. You also have the resurgence of Eric Stahl, who had a 65-point season, which is the most he's had since 2011 and 2012. And you have Joel Eriksson, who is now looking to be a serviceable third centerman at 20 years old, so he can easily be slotting into even the second line by the end of the season. So again, I'm reiterating this, but they are this weird mixture of good things and slightly bad things that I really am unsure about. They're going to be hard to pin down as to how good they're going to be next season. And for a team that may or may not be good, and that's in the Central Division, it's not looking like they're going to be... They're going to have to fight for a wild card spot. There's really no other way to put it. You have the resurgence of Dallas now. Dallas is looking to be a top 2 in the division. You have Chicago, St. Louis, and Nashville, who are the obvious favorites to be divisional winners this year. I don't see Minnesota making any headway top 3 in the division. They're going to have to fight for the wild card spot with the Pacific, and I think Arizona even has a better chance than this year now that they got a number of new guys on their team. And you're looking at a much stronger Oilers, you're looking at a much stronger Calgary. It's not that the Minnesota Wild are a bad team. It's a lot like the Islanders this year. It's a lot like the Philadelphia Flyers this year. They may be great, they may have improved drastically, but the teams that are going to fill those spots are still better. They may be a playoff team, but there may just not be room for them right now. There may not be room for them. There may not be enough slots for them. And that's just the reality of the division they are in, the reality of the conference they're in. And they're going to have to really pull it together to make enough headway to really get into the playoffs this coming season. So I do like the Wild. I do like Boudreau. I love Parise, obviously. I love Suter. So these are just really interesting and strange times for the Minnesota Wild. They're kind of in this purgatory of mediocrity, and I know that's almost like a meme at this point because it's really what they've been the past 5 or 6 years. It's just good enough to maybe get into the playoffs, but never good enough to make it past the first or even second round. But they're also not bad enough to really fall and get a first 5 round draft pick, first 5 draft pick in the first round. So what are they going to be doing? They have mediocre prospects, great players that are older. Parise is old, Stahl is old. You can say that they have a great coach, but he's always failing in the playoffs, and that's where the Wild really need the most help. And so it's just really hard to say with confidence how well the Wild are going to do next year. But I wouldn't be surprised if they make it into the second round of the playoffs, not by any means whatsoever. They're a lot like Columbus. They're a good team. I just think there's better teams ahead of them that they have to really leapfrog to get into those playoffs, into those rounds. And right now, I don't see that happening, especially with the trades they made this offseason. They really had to make some cap space to re-sign their core. They didn't improve. If anything, they really just lost a lot of value. And so my only hope is that with another year of Bruce Boudreau under their belt, they kind of gel a bit more, they get a better system in place. I'm just hoping they really go into next season and just knock it out of the park and get into the playoffs. And from there, it's really anyone's game. I think Boudreau has a good enough coaching repertoire to say that they can get out of the first round based on his coaching, but it's really do or die by Boudreau. That's really what it comes down to with the Minnesota Wild next year. They're not a team that's good enough to really do it on their own with a bad coach, and I'm not saying Boudreau is a bad coach, but they really rely on their coaching, and that's where Boudreau has to really step it up. So again, these are my 31 teams in the 31 day series. This is my Minnesota Wild one. I do apologize that it's been so long to get this out, but I'm going to try to get back on a normal schedule and start sending out a couple a day just to kind of catch up. So subscribe, like, and you'll be seeing a lot more of me soon. So take care, guys.